Greetings, dreamers. Autumn's brilliant cascade surrounds us as we continue our whimsical journey towards the fabled Canyon of Clouds, where a contest of power is expected to commence. All great stories contain some type of conflict. In most cases, there is a physical struggle that occurs between a hero and a villain. But there is almost always an inner struggle as well, a battle that the protagonist is fighting within themselves in order to grow and change. The internal battle usually mirrors the external conflict, and the two are connected in such a way that their resolutions are often contingent upon one another. If we are to overcome our nemesis, we may want to look at our own reflections and ask what it is about them that we can see in ourselves. It is the first step towards understanding the enemy as being more than just the bad guy. It is a far more complex relationship than that, for our shadows cannot be cast without the light that shines down upon us. Let's turn the page. Chapter 5, Chrysanthemum, Blessed by the Mother. Her swift method of passage from here to there is expedited, mostly by the red boots that formed an extension to her crimson cloak, and by some tufts of celestial cloud that now cling to her ankles like tiny wings. Each jump launches her further forward than the last, in the direction of the silver fish that she is pursuing. She wonders how these useful airfoils were manifested.
Boots of leaping. You've magically acquired them due to a needful circumstance.
The thinner head of Speartooth says.
It remains to be seen if they will last beyond the borders of this cloudy realm.
The trinity of Speartooth's embedded dream stars glimmers in turn, and the ruby gleam, set within the thinner head's gullet, reminds her of just how much she has forgotten. Her left ring finger feels exposed without it, despite the empty setting that remains in its place.
You're better off,
the fatter head claims.
All that rot is just a distraction from your quest now. Always stay focused on what is ahead. Don't dwell on what has been lost.
The fat one's eyes are glittering golden green from Grouper's star, peering into her mind.
I disagree.
The thinner head remarks.
I believe that memories, both good and bad, can be a source of strength. They remind us of those believers we honor with our actions. They are an accumulation of nostalgic reflections, lessons learned, and sacrifices made. The entire universe operates in a grand cyclical tradition of cause and effect. Balance is only maintained through the constant pressure of positive pushing against negative. Opposites define one another.
The fatter head scoffs at this remark and makes a noise like he is chewing on his own forked tongue.
Well,
she shrugs.
It seems I can only remember moments from my waking existence if something triggers a memory. I can't recall these things to mind on my own accord. I am an empty vessel, just as the Ascendant wanted me to be.
She is gaining on the silverfish. She's so close she can almost grab its swishing tail.
Stargazer said you should not be so quick to dismiss this experience as a dream, nor to accept the other as being the one true actuality, remember?
The thinner head advises.
I think he was speaking metaphorically.
She decides.
He was only trying to open my mind, pushing me into a willingness to question everything. For example, the Ascendant chose to willingly become one with the silver stream, to end its own suffering. I've been dreading that silver stream ever since I was pulled into this weird situation. I've been assuming that it is a terrible thing, that it means the end. But maybe it is not so bad as I think it is. Why do I fear my death so much? I'll tell you why. Because I don't know what death is like. I have grand ideas and I've been told stories, but no one has returned from death to tell me about it. At least, nobody who is real has. It only happens in stories, and those were all written by the living. So what can they possibly know about it?
Are you saying that you want to go join with the Silver Stream?
Speartooth asks in despondent unison.
Because we don't. We want to return home after all of this. Now that we are among the clouds again, we are closer to getting back than we figured we would ever be. We have come so very far with your help, and now you're just going to give it all up and abandon us here? Don't you feel any responsibility at all to carry on and to complete whatever it is that you've started?
Do I feel a responsibility to you?
She thinks about it for a bit.
No, not particularly. I didn't want to give you my stars, and I wasn't going to bring you along with me, but you insisted upon it. You've stolen my treasures and sworn to serve me, but now you condemn me for my thoughts? You are making me wish I had left you behind.
Her words are harsh, and Speartooth appears visibly injured by them. It's easy to forget the damage words can do.
What would your mother or your grandmother say?
The thinner head asks. That question was obviously meant to make her feel guilty, but it does not work.
I don't know,
She replies.
I have little to no memory of them, but for a few brief images and remnant feelings. Harumph!
The thinner head becomes indignant.
Hence the weakness of having no memories reveals itself. You have no sense of honor, nor do you understand the value of having others rely on you. A most unfortunate side effect of growing up is that you become anxious for freedom. You don't want to be tied down by responsibility to anyone or anything. You are aching to break away with reckless abandon. You will reap the whirlwind, all the while professing to know everything there is to know. This false confidence shall be your only defense against a deepening doubt. The older you get, the less certain you become, until one day you aren't even sure you know yourself anymore, and it scares you to think about it.
She stops for a moment, watching the silver fish she has been chasing swim off through the nighttime sky until it becomes a distant speck. The surrounding environment is transforming into a haunting autumn wood. All is eerily silent. She begins to feel uneasy.
What is real to you?
The thinner head continues to challenge her.
What matters to you? What would you stand for? You know, those stories of the ones who have died and returned from death? What if I told you that they are as true as you make them? What if I told you that there is no truth but what you choose to believe? For this life, and the life that preceded it, as well as the one that might follow hereafter, are all but dreams in the mind of time. You may feel no responsibility to us, but at least try and dredge up some sense of duty to your teacher, who died to give you a blessing, to the stargazer who gave you his precious star in good faith, or to that fox, Penumbra, who entrusted you with the quiver of arrows from the laughing tree. You may not remember what you believe to be your waking life, but you can at least recall those who have helped you since you arrived here.
Her frustration subsides. She realizes now just how selfish she is being. She hears her terse words echoing behind her, and she feels deeply ashamed.
I wasn't going to bring you along with me,
Speartooth speaks in perfect unison.
Tranquility is attained through the realization that one ultimately knows nothing. Take comfort in that and transcend the torture of your mortal existence by knowing peace. Suffering is the specter of your defeat, and you must face it at your breaking point. It is the final test and the culmination of all that you have been building both without and within. You will succeed, or you will fail. The outcome is meaningless. It's all about what you have decided to believe.
She pauses for an instant, reflecting upon all that has come to pass, and remembering the ones who have been so kind and helpful. The dragonfly, grouper, speartooth, penumbra, the stargazer, and the ascendant with its flock of bright birds. Even that tiny traveling snail. They've all played a role in her story thus far. Not one of them should be discounted, for no part was without significance. She feels all of the stories that have so inspired her congealing into one. Prior to being pulled through her bathroom mirror, she surely knew the voices of those who read them to her, and the faces of those who encouraged her to delight in her own imagination. She is filled with a swell of devotion to their absent memory. As hard as it is to do it, she lets her frustration with her memory go. It is then that she takes a giant leap forward.
I believe in happily ever after,
She says,
hence I will fight for that ideal, and for those who have placed their faith in me, as you have so justly reminded me. I'm sorry for being cold, careless, and thoughtlessly self-centered. I'm thankful and sincerely honored to have you with me, Speartooth.
The fatter head interrupts her contrition.
Be still.
Apology accepted.
The thinner head whispers.
Now, look out across the horizon. Do you see it?
Indeed, she does see what vigilant Speartooth senses. A silver cervid is standing there, staring at her from afar. Its ethereal gaze is stupefying. The cervid leaps down through the cloud bank, and she gives chase without hesitation. The silverfish has completely vanished from her sight, but now she has something much larger to hunt. She is already instinctively pulling an arrow into Speartooth's notch before she can even consider what she is doing. She glides stealthily downward through the same clouds that the cervid just descended through, and is surprised to feel her feet meet with hard ground. She looks out over the misty, sprawling expanse, and knows that she has arrived in the Canyon of Clouds. The terrain is composed of rust-colored slag surrounding her like the steps of an amphitheater. The burnt orange stone is all cracked and clutching dark autumnal trees, some bare but most with heads of brilliant fall leaves. There are streams of silver like tiny veins spreading in every direction. They trickle, flow, and spill into an undisturbed, ovular lake at the very bottom of the ravine. On the far side, beyond the lake, she can see an inlet, where the silver stream connects the lake to the ether. Her sight reaches far, through a vertical crevasse that opens into the cosmos. Like a massive keyhole, she can peer through this stellar mandorla and see a nebula in the shape of a great golden tree on the other side. The silver stream flows both towards and away from it simultaneously, in a graceful figure eight. She catches sight of the silver cervid bounding down the stones and prancing across the water's motionless surface. Once it reaches the dead center of the lake, it shrivels up into the semblance of the silver fish she'd been chasing, and dives into the shining depths. It makes no ripples. She recalls an old superstition, which states that if one goes hunting or even follows the forbidden mother of deer, it turns into an omen portending death. Her lithe, cloud-swathed boots make leaping down to the silver lake's edge a simple feat. She looks out across the glassy surface. It's so calm she considers searching for a smooth stone to skip across it. A silver swan bobs up in the same spot the silver fish had submerged. It turns around and begins silently drifting towards her. The swan has the haunting presence of a ghost as it calmly makes its way to shore. Its gentle beauty captivates her for a moment, but the swan's trance is broken when she is distracted by stirring from across the lake. She can see something wandering between the trees. At first, she thinks they're creeping clouds drifting amid the canyon, but she is mistaken. They are all transparent phantoms, and many of them are familiar to her. She first sees the sun bear, her tragic old friend. He appears lost and confused, pacing alongside the edge of the silver lake. He's turned to softened blue, no longer the dark, rampaging beast she defeated on the triangular island. She sees the swift shape of Penumbra slip behind the autumn facade. A dragonfly zips past. She assumes it must be the same one that helped her to escape from her wraith-like doppelganger. Also, there is a nimble coyote dancing jubilantly up and down the stone steps, unaware of his unfortunate plight. There is a bitter badger digging, a plaintive penguin waddling, a perturbed platypus plodding, and a timid turtle groggily tromping about. The longer she watches, the more of them she sees emerging from the shadows. Birds, insects, mammals, reptiles, all of them seemingly lost and terrified.
What are they all doing here?
She asks in a whisper. Her voice still echoes across the canyon. Speartooth shudders in her hand.
It is a secret to all of us, especially to you.
The fat head blurts, but in a hushed tone. The thin head sneers at its beefy counterpart, then answers her question.
They are the souls of those whom the accursed dark light has wrongfully taken. It keeps them trapped here, like a prison for their essential beings. You see, this is just one dimension of existence for us. We come and go as we see fit. When we finally die, we'll return here to join with the Silver Stream for all time. However, it seems these poor animals have not yet been granted release into the river of eternity. The darkness is blocking their passage. It's been gathering them up and confining them here to serve some dark, unnatural purpose.
They say that the Reaper chases you through your dreams.
The fathead forewarns.
If death catches up with you, it'll paralyze you with fear, and you'll never wake up.
She lifts an eyebrow at these credulous words. The silver swan approaches, and as she steps curiously towards the edge of the silver lake, she can see her shadowy reflection rippling in the swan's countenance. The silent silver mirror cracks, dispersing the swan and hauntingly transforming into her dark simulacrum, made up of fish-shaped teardrops and glowing green mist. The reflective specter screeches as a threatening horned behemoth rises out of the water beneath. An enormous green bull materializes from the lake with her shadow riding on its back. It snorts 2 streams of vapor, stamps a hole in the ground with its right front hoof, and viciously lunges at her in a timed flash of silver, black, and green. She swiftly steps aside and rolls out of the way with the help of her trusty cloud-winged boots.
Perhaps we should flee to higher ground.
Speartooth recommends in unison. She glances at each of her weapons' curved heads.
You know, you are both a lot more talkative now than I remember.
She observes as she races between the dark trees. Their crookedly twisting branches snap off of her frock's scales and tear through the fringes of her crimson cape, leaving the ends ragged. Her entire cloak is becoming brittle to the touch and begins flaking again, much like it did when she first donned it.
Well, we had an awful long time to think while you were training.
Speartooth admits, flickering their forked tongues. She almost kicks a phantom rabbit that's hopping along, keeping pace with her. She is reminded of her guilt at having caused the suicidal beaching of all those sea creatures along the sanctuary shores of the Southern Triangle. She doesn't bother to look behind her. She draws back and releases the first desperate arrow she'd already notched into Speartooth while pursuing the cervid. Then, reflexively, she fires off an entire barrage. She imagines all of the arrows landing in between her pursuing shadow's murderously glowing eyes. However, the specter sees them coming and has a bow as well, fashioned from a branch of gnarled chokecherry. Lukiat lets loose its own magical projectiles, winged wisps with arms and legs. They are fairies, or at least they were at one time. Now they are living weapons in the thrall of a merciless master. They seek out each of her arrows and cut them down in midair. She draws the final sprig left in her fertile quiver, and must wait now for it to replenish itself. She focuses on the forehead of the snorting bull that is trampling its way across the canyon, rending asunder anything in its path. Her fingers lock the arrow into place. She pulls back the bowstring and releases it in a single fluid motion. Her sharp message curls through the air, spinning like a drill until it meets its target. It lands and sticks perfectly between the bull's fierce orbs, causing the bovine behemoth to trip, fall forward, and throw the specter off of its back. Then the bull nosedives, disastrously plowing past her as she leaps out of the way. It crashes headfirst through an old brick retaining wall on the far side of the Silver Lake. She crouches and watches the dust from the bull's destruction settle. Suddenly, she feels the air split and hears something tear through her ravaged cape and ping hard off of her scaled frock. She glances down and sees a fairy lying prostrate on the ground. She hears yet another ping and feels a second fairy drop onto and roll over her boot. It twitches, then goes still. She peers up as the last of the wafting debris clears, to see the angry specter approaching with its gnarled bow trained on her. The arrows of the laughing tree are nearly replenished. She swats one of the specter's fairy darts out of the air as it careens towards her face. She stands her ground, plucks a crisp new twig from her quiver, and pulls back, holding the bowstring's tension in place. She's primed and ready for battle. Her dark simulacrum steps forward. Each of them takes aim directly at the other's heart. Arrows fly.
Finally, you have come to redeem yourself and to reckon with me.
The ominous voice of Lukiat issues forth.
But it will do no good for us to waste these tender words.
The specter drops its bow and discards its batch of enthralled fairies. It lurks like a predator on top of what's left of the retaining wall that its dreadful steed demolished.
Come, let us appeal to one another with our swords.
With conviction, she drops Speartooth and her quiver to the ground and joins her nemesis atop the wall. Calling Pusaka forth from her imagination, the barbed blade materializes in her hand like a bolt of red lightning. Imbued with her power, the blade crackles and sings a song of primordial fire. Lukiat grins with delight, baring its fangs.
Yes! Now we can see just how much you've grown without me. Do you remember these?
Lukiat's voice stings her ears when she sees what the specter has pulled from the belt of its tattered garb. Her enemy is clutching a pair of scissors, the very same ones she had brought with her when she was pulled through the mirror, and with which she had wounded her shadow when it assumed the form of the large black crow. She may have inadvertently provided her foe with the means to dispatch her. Oh, what regrettable irony.
These are a symbol of our separation. Only one of us could have survived. Of course, they chose you.
Lukiat sneers.
I was sacrificed so that you could become who you are now. But we both carry the scar. The birthmark. In my case, it became a death mark. A star-shaped incision that set you free and trapped me forever in this dream. This ocean of nothingness.
The scissors enlarge, and the begrudging specter pulls them apart, making two shimmering scimitars.
You came here to prove yourself, and yet you do not even know your enemy. But I know you all too well.
Lukiat rushes at her, slashing the air with its twin blades. She stands firm, pointing the briar tip of her weapon at her oncoming foe. She is patiently waiting for her angry shadow to reveal its weakness.
They say you should never poke a sleeping giant.
Lukiat taunts her.
But you were just so eager to awaken me. You must have been lonely. Well, here I am, your new playmate, wide awake and ready for our deadly game.
Her physical training, still untested, begins to display itself. There it is, a slight misstep. She lunges forth and brings Pusaka to bear upon her rival. Their swords meet with a clang that is so loud it can be heard across the entirety of existence. Their battle sends out shockwaves of disruption that change the very fabric of the improbable reality. The sun moves across the sky in the blink of an eye. Night falls quickly, and the full moon looms. A creeping shadow is passing over its hovering luminance. A double eclipse has begun. Her crimson tunic starts to change. She can feel herself becoming stronger with every strike. Even though her doppelganger is successfully deflecting each attack, she can tell that the specter is struggling to keep up.
I know you better than you know yourself.
Lukiat's smooth voice turns raspy. The dark light swipes high and then low with each of its glowing green swords. She ducks beneath them, adroitly flips over Lukiat's shoulder, and twirls about, slashing wide to force her advantage. She's got the specter on its heels now, and she is not relenting.
You cannot vanquish me with your aggression.
Her foe grins, baring its mouth full of jagged teeth.
Anger is what draws me to you. Your spite, fear, and violent urges all make me stronger. You know this to be true, and yet you persist. I believe you want me to exist. You need me. Without me to torment you, you would feel purposeless. You have no real reason to hate me. Your guilt is what frustrates you the most, not me. Your privilege is your shame. Our mother abandoned me. She murdered me for you.
Up until now, she's dismissed most of what the specter has said to her, passing it off as the petulant slander of a demon trying to cloud her judgment, cut her deeply, and dance upon her doubts. But for some reason, she can't deny it anymore. Her intuition insists that this supposed villain is telling the truth. Then she recalls all of the ghosts trapped in the canyon, and her focus returns.
Why do you keep them here? Why won't you let them go free?
She attacks furiously with both her sword and her words.
You are evil. I will end your tyranny. Release them all, now!
She lunges with Pusaka, but misses her mark. As the celestial spheres converge, the night sky darkens even more, and stars twinkle into view. She continues attacking with resolute conviction. Lukiat laughs and seems to be enjoying their exchange when a fugue state clouds over the specter's bright eyes. It leaps away, retreating with the wind. Her shadow cackles maniacally and recoils, leaping over the wall and withdrawing into the deep embrasure that carries the silver stream out from the canyon's pristine lake into the astral atmosphere. She immediately gives chase, and darts through the seductive darkness. Her mantle is flaking apart like dead leaves on the autumn breeze. Their battle continues to intensify while they navigate the snaking shoreline. The moon seems to gyre and follow their movements, its an ever-watchful eye, observing. Lukiat urges her on, daring her to push herself beyond any self-imposed limitations that are holding her back. She embraces her blinding rage, tossing aside her suspicion that the specter is luring her somewhere. Pusaka thirsts for blood. It isn't long before she regrets her reckless pursuit and finds that she's blundered into an expansively tangled web. Luckily, her fleet boots are nimble enough to help her escape. She looks out across the fibrous snare and sees many mummified shapes of captive creatures. Only one victim appears to still be struggling. The rest have either expired or surrendered to their fates. Her instincts tell her to back off and recollect herself. Something is happening to her. She assumes a bold posture on an outcropping at the edge of the web. Pusaka glows a dreadful red. Lukiat's eldritch tongue reverberates throughout the darkness. Good and evil are ignorant creations of humankind. There is no divine superior that dictates living law, no authority for concern. You only become truly free when you realize that you are imprisoned by the false notions of rectitude created by those seeking to make you subordinate to their didactic wills. The shadow's words echo in her ears, unrelenting in their insistence. She can feel the air changing. Something is manifesting. Slinking out of the shadows, enveloped in a ghoulish fog, creeps the specter's hideous new form. Under the cold, dimming light of the eclipsing moon, she can see its razor-tipped beak, its long, crackling legs, its many glowing eyes, and its broad, stinging tail. It is an abominable amalgam of Lukiat's myriad forms, come to claim her for the stream of death. Kindle a pure light in the darkness, O blessed one, and I will come to take you away. I am happy to see that you finally let go of all that you have been holding on to. She continues to stand firmly atop the ledge of sharp stones. Her red mantle has gone dry and is crumpling, disintegrating with the stale breeze that is issuing from the monster's infernal mouth. Her skin sears and is charred by its hot breath. Can you not feel the chains? Lukiat asks. Despite having cut the cord and severed our connection, you still harbor the fear. You are afraid of what I represent, your certain doom. But I have come to rock you to everlasting sleep. I will be gentle and swift. Give yourself to me. Let me carry you home. The beast pokes at her head with its bird-like beak, snipping away some of her tawny hair, which turns dark as it drops away through the net of webbing. Time grinds to a halt. The moon is eclipsed when aligning with the sun, and icy rays of indigo light illuminate the last vestiges of her crimson cloak. Her outfit reforms, with cusps as keen as an iron maple leaf, colored burnt orange and earthy brown. What remains of her disintegrated cape becomes silver pauldrons, and the symbol on her chest changes as she swells with power. She bravely steps back onto the web to face her foe. Below, there is a gateway grotto, whereby the river of pale silence leaks out through the keyhole fissure into the brilliant cosmos. The golden tree coruscates like a beacon, beckoning her to spring into the light everlasting and embrace her peaceful conclusion. She recalls what the Ascendant taught her. She bounces off of the web, lands on the monster's threatening venom bulb, and plunges Pusaka in deep. The fiend howls in pain, thrashing its tail about, but she refuses to retract. She is resolved to conquering her foe. She digs in deeper, twisting Pusaka like a crimson corkscrew through the monster's poisonous telson. Purple plasma explodes from the wound and splashes across the creature's back. It sizzles and steams. She then withdraws her furious blade from the demon's tail, flips over its hindquarters, and slices the webbing underneath it, sending the monstrosity plummeting into the stream below. She nearly follows her enemy down, but at the last second she manages to grab some loose webbing and pulls herself to safety after swinging wild and slamming into the nearby rock face. The force with which she meets the stone is absorbed by her new autumn armor. She poses proudly, reassured of herself in her freshly transmuted attire. The lunar eclipse is over, and the moon glows with a chilling beauty. She is victorious, just as the Ascendant had predicted she would be. Pusaka vanishes, retreating into her imagination again. A faint voice can still be heard drifting away down the silver stream.
I will forever be a dagger in your psyche,
Lukiat says.
Until you release me, your friends will never truly be free of my wrath.
She thinks upon this, and feels pity for all of the poor animals her shadow has imprisoned. She knows that she should not blame herself for their suffering, but she still feels responsible. She tugs at the brim of her newly formed hat. It has a perfect notch cut out of it in the front that allows her windswept swoosh of hair to billow through it. She feels warm rays of sun, no longer interrupted by the brisk moon, streaming from out the fissure and reflecting off of her copperish armor and the dangling remains of the giant web. For a moment, all is silent. Then she hears a muffled honking sound coming from the only mummified victim still displaying signs of life. It's hanging by a thread. She drags it up onto the rock ledge and tears the sack open. Putrid mucus pours from the web cocoon as a long snout bursts out of the slime, gasping for air. It snorts and sputters in a cacophonous dialect. She can barely endure hearing it, let alone understand it. After straining to listen for a while, the rambunctious creature's tempestuous trumpeting becomes audible to her, and its foamy blathering simmers down into words.
Oh, thank you. You've saved my immortal soul from the fatal clutches of the dark light.
That which speaks in heraldic proclamation is a rather large seahorse, crusty with ocean salt.
I'm at your service and in your debt.
The seahorse blinks a few times and looks her over.
Glorious day! The Mother Root foretold to me the coming of the one who would release the prisoners of the dark light. It is you, is it not? You are the one who carries justice and will right the wrongs perpetrated by the two-eyed storm. Aren't you?
She can only assume that she is, so she nods. She starts to wipe off some of the ooze covering the seahorse's body as it toots merrily.
This is a day to rejoice, a day of reckoning and redemption.
You are not a ghost like the others,
She observes.
No, because I've been blessed by the Mother of Trees. Her divine touch is what protects me from those rabid silver fish. They can't penetrate her golden spell, which encases me. I was refined into a living treasure and given a purpose. The dark light found out about me and kidnapped me from my home in the dream sea. No doubt to prevent you and I from ever meeting. But still, you have found and rescued me, hence my reason for being shall be fulfilled. It is our destiny.
She doesn't have a clue what the seahorse is talking about, but she smiles all the same and pats it softly on the forehead. It isn't that she doesn't believe in destiny. She's just having trouble imagining what role this crusty honker could possibly have to play in hers.
You doubt me. I speak only the truth. To do otherwise would compromise my mission. Despite the ever-changing nature of this world, my commitment to honesty will endure.
She shrugs and nods, accepting the seahorse at its word, though still confused by its meaning.
You must have noticed it by now.
The noisy little creature toots.
Everything around here is in a constant state of flux, taking on brand new shapes and forms at the drop of a hat. Sometimes I appear quite large, and other times I become small, depending upon the environment I inhabit. The dreamer wills it to be so. Like granted wishes, things may be transformed to suit our convenience. You have changed, have you not? Your body and your clothing, the objects you carry. You must have experienced this phenomenon by now.
She's reminded of Penumbra telling her something similar, so she nods again in affirmation of the fact that many aspects of this dreamlike world have seemed, for lack of a better word, inconsistent. But it doesn't bother her. In fact, she's enjoying it.
I have a theory.
The seahorse squeaks.
I figure the dreamer must either have a very eccentric sense of humor or a selective memory. Then again, I suppose it's possible that this unorthodox reality has no real substance, and thereby it lacks consistency.
Whoever is painting this picture may simply not care. Maybe the dreamer is committed to the pursuit of joyful whimsy instead of scrutinizing inane details.
She blurts this notion out in an almost defensive tone. The briny critter honks, rather surprised.
Forgive me, but it sounds like you are making excuses for chaos.
The seahorse opines. She is puzzled by her own words. Why did she feel inclined to defend the phantasmagoria of it all? She sees Speartooth's twin heads swelling and stretching in accordance with the conversation. The seahorse likewise distorts before her very eyes, but she chooses to ignore these obvious peculiarities. The seahorse flicks itself clean of the congealing mucus and curls up its tail. It floats into the air and hovers before her, glowing like a candle.
I shall henceforth be your herald. Press your lips to my tail and blow. The breath within you holds the sound of all creation. A single utterance from your soul can move mountains or wake up the dead. Use me to set the prisoners of the dark night free. Release them from their eternal sorrow.
She reaches out for the seahorse's curly tail and brings it to her puckered lips. She inflates her cheeks, then blows with all of her might. A single note, as deep as the depthless ocean and as clear as a crystal bell, rings out across the universe. Clinging remnants of web stuck underfoot, as well as the tangled threads still left dangling in the breeze, begin vibrating in sequential tones. The tones then overlap into chords, creating a complex melody of oscillating waves that pick her up and launch her back into the canyon of clouds. Her feet strike earth and clay and slide forward as her mighty note persists. It pulsates, sending euphonious ripples of resonant light throughout the canyon. Each intangible phantom that hears the rich sound reconstitutes and becomes corporeal. All of the clouds in the canyon begin swirling about, and the darkened trees blush with color sprouting new autumn leaves. The Silver Lake churns, and the broken retaining wall rebuilds itself as the body of the green bull that had barreled through it crumbles to dust. She stops blowing and lowers the seahorse.
Amazing!
She exclaims.
The universe was created by a single sound, within which each and every moment exists in singularity. That sound is still echoing, and it will continue to do so until time itself stops forever.
The seahorse says. She spots a vine of opalescent ivy weaving itself out of the torrid earth to pry open a rusted gateway on the other side of the canyon where she had initially entered. Many of the restored animals are slowly migrating through the gate, while a few others are wading out into the Silver Lake, submerging themselves in eternity. She watches this procession with mixed emotions.
You have given them all a choice.
The seahorse happily honks.
The dark light took away their freedom, but now they can each decide for themselves if they are ready to join with the stream or return to their lives.
It is all very bittersweet to her. She decides to go retrieve Speartooth in her quiver and is pleased to be met by a familiar face. Penumbra is there, standing beside her living treasures. The specter's chokecherry bow and fairy arrows have disappeared, leaving behind no trace. The seahorse shrinks down to a fittingly portable size, and she tucks it into her beltline.
It's good to see you again, Penumbra. I'd hoped you would have fled to safety into the deeper woods after I was whisked away by the stargazer.
She says, petting the russet fur around the great fox's neck. She exhales a deep sigh of relief.
Your nemesis is so much more powerful than you realize.
Penumbra replies.
I had very little chance of escaping. I see that you have changed your appearance.
Yes, I rather like it. Though I have not given it a good look, I am becoming accustomed to not seeking out my reflection, as it always seems to bring trouble.
She runs her fingers across the new symbol that has formed on her breastplate. Her armored scales are as hard as diamonds now.
I did battle with my doppelganger, and I was triumphant. Now we can all breathe easy.
She smiles proudly and stands a little taller.
If you believe the dark light has been permanently defeated, then think again.
Penumbra circles her.
It has merely retreated to lick its wounds and fight another day. I assure you, when the winter solstice comes, the shadow will return to hunt you down. It is for that hardship that you must now prepare yourself. Come, ride upon my back once more. We should find our way to the splendid city of Wuhai. It is a place of legendary mystery. There you can rest for a while and recuperate. I'll be glad to put this place behind us. Yes!
Speartooth is very excited to hear this, and the two heads speak as one.
Wuhai was once our home. We are finally going home.
Before bestriding Penumbra, she looks back at the ivy-covered gateway. There is one last animal meandering towards it. The sun bear glances up at her curiously from across the rejuvenated canyon. She can sense that he does not recognize her. He stares into the shimmering surface of the Silver Lake for a solemn moment. She holds her breath, desperately hoping that he won't choose to ford the river of eternity just yet. The sun bear snorts, then abruptly turns around and hustles through the gate. He's chosen to rejoin the living. She smiles and sighs, relieved to see her old friend go. She is just about to climb up onto Penumbra's scruffy back when a tiny camouflaged lizard suddenly materializes on her shoulder. It crawls into the palm of her hand to say,
Thank you for freeing us.
It is a geckomelion, and it sticks out its long tongue, offering unto her a topaz dream star. She gratefully accepts the precious gift and imagines it being affixed to Pusaka's hilt, inset behind the ascendant's shrunken heart. Then she mounts her vulpine steed.
Away we go,
Penumbra declares. They make for the city of Uhai to unwind and maybe even get into a little monkey business. Well, that was satisfying, wasn't it? But the struggle does not end there. We've so much further to go before we reach our point of origin. Maybe we should rest a while and reflect on what we've learned so far. It may be useful as we navigate our way forward towards whatever is over the next horizon. Until we meet again, I wish you peace, love, and thunderstorms. Farewell, dreamers.